Hi there and welcome to my local woods. Have you ever wondered what childhood was like during the Viking Age? As a historical novelist, that's something that I have looked into quite a bit. Childhood during the Viking Age was short. From the age between 12 and 14, depends a little bit on on your sources there, but from then on up you would be considered an adult. That didn't necessarily mean that you would leave the farm and start your own family, but you would have the responsibilities of an adult from that age, and you would also have to fight and contribute in the defense of the coastline and so on through what was called Leidangen. I'll get into that in a different video, or else I'll just keep going here. But that's basically where each local community had the responsibility of some kind of defense along the coast. And from the age of between 12 and 14, you would be, as a boy, considered to participate in that. Boys would spend most of their time with their fathers and other male members of the extended family on the farm or wherever they were living. They would be taught the father's craft, like for instance if the father was a blacksmith, that's probably what you would be doing as a boy and also as an adult. Because that's the craft that your father would teach you. Girls would spend their time with the mother and female members of the extended family. So it was not our perception of feminism and so on. It doesn't really apply when it comes to those times back then. We also know that children participated in sports. Sports was actually an important part of Viking society, and kids would join in and do sports. So that would be like, archery, something called glima, which is a form of wrestling, skiing during the winter, and basically they would be quite active in that regard. Now, what I've heard when it comes to girls and sports is that before Christianity, girls would participate in sports, but after Christianity that was no longer allowed. And by the way, if you enjoy this video so far, why don't you consider subscribing? I think this is a YouTube channel for you if you are sick and tired of the stress and all the pressure of modern society. This is where you can come to, just relax and ponder about times past, especially the Viking Age. We also need to consider that it was a society where a large part of the population were actually slaves. So we can assume that childhood would have been different for the slaves that were children born into slavery. Children born into slavery were seen as commodities, basically. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were treated badly. Slaves and slave children were not the only ones that were seen as commodities. Actually, people at the very, very top of the hierarchy, excuse my pronunciation there, at the top of society, like nobles, especially the daughters born into nobility, were also seen as commodities. They were very often used to form alliances. They were married off, and through marriage alliances were formed and secured. We also know that among people of a certain status, fostering was quite common. So people would send the son to another chieftain or to a king possibly, and they would kind of sometimes exchange sons, and they would foster the other family's son. It was probably seen as a way again to form alliances, to strengthen alliances, but also obviously if you sent your son to a king or an earl, that would strengthen your son's chances of rising up in society. Child mortality was probably quite high, especially you know during the first year. That was a dangerous time, and childbirth was dangerous, very often dangerous to the mother. And it's one of these things that we take for granted these days. We are very lucky, he says, wearing Viking clothes and wanting to go back to the Viking Age. But yeah, I realize that we are very lucky in that regard. But many children, they didn't live through their first years, you know, that's just how it was. And I think that was part of life back then. They probably almost expected that. Can you see the horses? Oh, hello. They're scratching each other. I think that kids back then, they helped, you know, with the chores, the things that needed to be done on the farm, and tending to the animals, feeding the animals. Maybe you would be out herding the goats. Maybe you would be out with your mother foraging, or out in the fjord with your father fishing. And you would be given tasks depending on your age and whether you were a girl or a boy. And as you grew older, you would have more demanding tasks. And by the way, I have gotten quite a few questions about the clothes that I'm wearing. I actually have a video about those. I'll put it up here on the end screen. And I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, have a wonderful day. Bye bye.